Chancellor Motley, I have the honor to present to you Gerard Bolton White for investiture with the Chancellor's Medal for Distinguished Service.
Gerard Bolton White, your lifelong fight for human rights has helped spread goodwill around the world, and your work on the international campaign to ban landmines rightfully earned the 1997 Nobel Prize for Peace. Following your own brush with death, when you stepped on an old landmine in Israel, you spearheaded efforts to promote a mine-free Middle East with King Hussein and Queen Noor of Jordan in the Israeli Knesset, voted in 2010 to clear old minefields in Israel. You've led efforts to draft and enact laws to protect the rights of 650 million people with disabilities around the world. And 3 of your campaigns led to major international treaties, including the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the Cluster Munitions Treaty, and the Landmine Ban Treaty. You served 3 years as U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and helped launch the Bureau of Conflict and Stabilization Operations, through which you advanced analytics and developed strategies for conflict diplomacy. You further developed conflict diplomacy technology as founding partner and CEP of Global Impact Strategies Incorporated. In addition to the Nobel Prize for Peace, you have received the Numi Award for Interreligious Diplomacy, the Superior Honor Award from the United States Department, the Roots of Peace Global Humanitarian Award, and the first International UNA Humanitarian Prize from Sir Paul McCartney and Heather Mills. Woo! So, today, Gerald Bolton White, we honor you today for your determination in overcoming adversity and your inspired leadership as a humanitarian and human rights activist. It is our privilege to award you this Chancellor's Medal for Distinguished Service. Now, with your 2016 commencement address, please welcome Jerry White. Come on up.
Thank you so very much. It's a great honor and privilege to be here. In fact, I just had a flashback that the only other time I received a medal was when I played the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz at age 11. So thank you very much, Chancellor Motley, and all of you. I feel that I'm standing in the way of you and dinner, or your degrees. Very proud of all of you. And today's message that was sort of on my heart to just speak to you was flashing back to when I was your age, and also thinking about how is it that we can together embrace change. Because change is coming very fast and furious, and things are not settling down. People are talking about a self-destructive world. new systems, failed institutions, whole failed regions like the Middle East. So the headlines are not pretty, and your research assignments are needed now more than ever to be applied in action in the world, to go forth, lech lecha, as was the command to Abraham, to go forth out of your comfort zone, out of this incubation, and into the world for impact. So how to embrace change? You've probably heard that joke that no one likes change but a wet baby. So I'm looking at all of you right now and just thinking, wet babies, wet babies. I want you all to be wet babies, and I want you to like change. So the question is, how, in the face of disaster, in the face of death and disability and disease, all those awful D words, and despair over what to do, what can one do? What can you do? What can we do in terms of having a pledge of not allegiance just to a school, or not allegiance to a party or your next presidential or political vote, but a pledge of resilience? What would a pledge of resilience look like? What is it that we can be adaptive and changeable in the face of dramatic and systemic change in your futures? The next 20 years are going to be vitally important and call on all of us, but particularly you, wet babies in front of me. So it leads me to my own little story of massive white privilege in Massachusetts. I grew up on the South Shore. I used to drive by this campus when I would make field trips into Boston. I grew up in this little preppy town called Cohasset. How many of you have heard of Cohasset? Jerusalem Road. It is one of the prettiest towns, I think, in the world. I mean, that's why they filmed The Witches of Eastwick there, right? So Cohasset is a bubble of privilege, but it's not perfect at all. But you know that saying about to whom much is given, much is required or expected? I felt that and have felt that on my shoulders because I was able to go to college, go to a great school, Brown University, debt-free. I was able to get an MBA at Michigan debt-free because of the hard work and story of being a fifth-generation Irish Catholic. So this is on the shoulders like great-great-great-grandparents that started in hard times in Boston, then bought a cow, and then it became a story of White Brothers Milk that then became a business. And so I was the beneficiary of that fruit of amazing immigrant labor in this country and in this city. I'm proud. I'm proud, but I'm also pressured. So I thought, how can I actually leave and get out of my comfort zone? What's the payoff and the payback here? What can I do? So the story goes that I hop on a plane and I go to the Middle East. I go to Jerusalem. I go to the center of conflict, the mother lode of conflict. And I love it. Walking in the footsteps of the prophets, the Holy Land, having the biblical landscapes come alive. And then one day when I was hiking in a beautiful April morning, suddenly, the world exploded all around me. I was hiking with two American friends in the Golan Heights in an area that was heavily mined. This was one of the biggest minefields in the world, and we had chose to go camping through some back door and an unmarked fence and path that led to near disaster. So you heard that I stepped on a landmine. I didn't even know what one was. I had never said the word, or what is a minefield? Where does it begin? Where does it end? But I saw what landmines do, and what they're designed to do, which is to maim you and to terrorize you, to tear off a piece of your body with just the right amount of explosive powder, that in fact you look down at your body and, as I did, say, where's my foot? Where's my leg? Where's my foot? I have no foot. I have no foot. What are those bones? Where's my leg? And entered into a type of shock that I was able to see even until this day in slow motion, the way trauma sears in your memory, those types of events. So for me, this became a before and after moment. Maybe that's a good definition of trauma. A day or moment where life is never, ever the same again. So the good news is we all get out of this minefield alive. But I ask you all, what about that cliche, hackneyed and overused, that life is a minefield? Or you're going to a political moment in the university, that's a minefield. So what is it? How are you going to overcome those landmine explosions? Because they will come, because no one ever escapes life without some scar tissue. If you don't already have a date, you have your birth date, you have this graduation date. I think you all have an end date, an expiration date, and along the way, some other things are to come your way. So I just wanted to share, what would the pledge of resilience look like? What is the recipe? How does one remain resilient in the face of traumatic difficulties around the corner as you go forth? So number one, we learned from tens of thousands of survivor interviews around the world, from Mozambique to Vietnam to El Salvador to Bosnia to Jordan, about this recipe for resilience. What did survivors of the worst disasters and war tell us or teach us about overcoming life crises? Number one, face facts. My leg's not growing back. I'm not a starfish. My hair's not growing back. Face facts and breaking through denial. It may be the hardest piece, and also emotions are facts. I hate this. I don't know if I want to live this way. I don't know if I can do this. Those are facts to look at straight in the eye. Number two, choose life, not death, this day. That's from Deuteronomy, right? But choosing life is a daily thing. It's a question about hope, that I wouldn't be defined forever by this awful, most painful moment in my life, that there was something else in the future. There would be more. So the idea of the possibilities are very important for us to have the willpower to choose life. Number three, what do survivors teach us about resilience, about overcoming? Reach out. Reach out, because no one graduates alone, no one survives alone, and a wet baby doesn't change itself. You must do it. No one succeeds in a way without the village coming within you from your past and surrounding you this day and moving forward. And communities and networks are critical that we lead with collective wisdom. So reach out and reach back to these resources. The fourth secret of ingredients of success for resilience is actually get moving. Get out. Get out of your comfort zone. I remember when I was in the hospital for 6 months in Israel, there was a chance that, in fact, my father was president of New England Baptist Hospital here in Boston. And so the whole family, my brothers and sisters, the extended aunts and uncles and cousins were all saying, bring the boy home. He'll have the best care in Boston, a private room, the best doctors. And I said, no, it happened here. I want to deal with it here. And sadly, it's normal here in Israel. I mean, I'll joke with you that, in fact, if you decide that you want to step on a landmine, I would advise you do it in Israel, because it has some of the best trauma care in the world. And in that room in 1984, for 6 months, I had 4 or 5 guys who had been blown up in Lebanon during the war in the 1980s. And in fact, they were missing arms and legs and eyes. And it was actually the peer support of reaching out and the fellowship of suffering that helped grizzle me for some of the future challenges that I would face, on the global stage. So get moving. When I finally got out of the hospital bed and into a wheelchair, the nurse who was sort of settling me and through the pain looked at me, and I thought she was going to wheel me down to the cafeteria to get some of that great matzah bread and deviled eggs or whatever we were going to be served that day. And she said to me, if you want to move, push thyself. No one was going to push me. There was no heavy coddling in Israel. It was a tough love. So I learned to start to push, that every step you had to do your own rehab. No one was going to do it for you. You had to study. You had to do your exams. You had to push through personal trauma as well as work, as well as a lot of deadlines and products to get through to today. So I'm not making these things equivalent. I'm just saying I understand what it takes to push through and overcome at that level. So after, if you're going to remember now, there's a quiz here. Number 1, face facts. Number 2, choose life. Number 3, reach out. Number 4, get moving. And number 5 might be the most special ingredient and the most important of all, if you want a pledge of resilience in your life to face difficult times and overcome. Number 5. Give back. Give, 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 give. In traveling the world, we saw that, in fact, there was like a group of people who went through awful things, and they were the victims, and there were hallmarks of victimhood. They were living in the past. There was resentment. There was entitlement. There was actually taking, because a victimhood experience like addiction is insatiable. I don't blame people, in fact, if they're refugee status and they saw their sister killed in front of them and they're missing limbs and they have no home or job. There is real victimization out there, so I'm not making light of this. But it also can be a hallmark when that difficulty becomes a disease of victimhood. And I would ask you, even in our political season, to listen to the language, despite your sort of allegiances, to listen to the language of victimhood that creeps up and why. Where are those hallmarks of entitlement, of blaming, of shaming, of resentment? You know, political sheep dressed up, I don't know what the saying be, in victims' clothing, or victims dressed up in sheep's clothing. We hear it back and forth, but we have to say, what is true resilient leadership of overcoming? It is not victim speak. And a victim leader is dangerous for this country that is known for its resilience and its immigration and its history, which is full of creativity and overcoming. So also on that give back, not just to your university, but in little ways and big ways, the studies do show that your serotonin levels will be boosted as you give. So that's what we saw, that those survivors who were no longer victims and were giving, even though they had very little, had smiles on their faces as if no one told them about how awful life was. So give, give, give till it hurts, give all the time. And so that's what I would, I guess, conclude with, is survivorship for all of us in the face of all this change is to face and live dynamically and positively given the challenges of disease and disaster and debt and worry and war, things that are not going away anytime soon. So this resilience pledge that I would ask of you is to look forward to leadership that is courageous, that has humor in it. That's one of the number one signs of resilience you can detect in a leader, whether they have humor. Victims have very little humor. So push forward with courage, with perseverance, with hope, and with generosity as you graduate today. I feel very proud to be here to receive this honor at this great university, and I hope you're feeling as proud to stand tall and walk. Thank you.
What an incredible human being. That's how we treat family around here, Jerry. Welcome to the family.